Welcome, traveller, to Medieval Screen Finds, our quiet corner of the internet where we explore history, an adventurer's paradise where we explore stories from our not-so-distant past. We invite you now to settle in, to find a comfortable space, and to let your mind drift gently back through the centuries. Tonight, we drift back, far from the hurried pace of our modern world, to an age where the rhythm of life was dictated by the sun, the seasons, and the winding paths beneath one's feet. We will explore the roads of medieval Europe, not with the intention of excitement, but with the gentle aim of understanding, of imagining ourselves amidst the dust and the quiet struggle of those who walked before us. This is a journey designed for repose, for a tranquil exploration of a world that was both arduous and remarkably simple. Allow the subtle hum of history to lull you as we uncover the often unseen realities of travel in an era long past. Prepare to unwind, to settle into a space of calm contemplation as we embark on the unfiltered history of medieval road travel, bandits, bogs, and blisters. Imagine, if you will, a time when the world moved at the pace of a steady stride, when every journey was an undertaking of profound significance, etched deeply into the memory of the traveller. The air, then, was clean, often carrying the scent of damp earth after a passing shower, or the dry, herbaceous aroma of summer fields. The distant sound of a cowbell, perhaps, or the soft murmur of a brook, would be the only interruptions to the pervasive quiet. It was a world that demanded patience, resilience, and an intimate connection with the land. Tonight, we will not rush, nor will we seek thrills. Instead, we will gently unfold the tapestry of medieval road travel, examining its threads of necessity, hardship, and the quiet determination of those who traversed its challenging expanse. Let us begin our journey, slowly, softly, together. If you enjoy stories like this, subscribe to Medieval Screen Finds to get more boring sleep videos, but only if these videos truly brings you rest. Please let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is. It's comforting seeing all the places where these calm historical stories reach. In the vast, sprawling tapestry of medieval Europe, life was lived within the confines of one's village, one's manor, one's small, familiar world. Yet, for many, the call of the road, though fraught with peril and uncertainty, was an insistent, often unavoidable summons. It was not a call born of leisure or recreation, for such concepts were largely unknown to the common folk. Instead, it was a profound journey of necessity, an essential thread woven into the very fabric of existence. To step onto the open road was to commit to an undertaking that demanded physical fortitude, mental resilience, and an unwavering acceptance of the unknown. Imagine yourself, if you will, standing at the edge of a well-trodden path, the morning mist clinging to the hedgerows, a faint chill in the air, contemplating the vast, unpredictable expanse that lay before you. For the pilgrim, the road was a path to spiritual salvation, a penitential journey undertaken to seek divine favor, to atone for sins, or to fulfill a solemn vow. They might travel for weeks, even months, their feet aching with every step, their minds fixed on the distant shrine, perhaps Canterbury, Santiago de Compostela, or Rome. The purpose was clear, the devotion unwavering. Yet the physical reality of the journey was relentlessly demanding. Imagine the rhythmic thud of their worn leather boots on the hardened earth, the subtle creak of a staff against their palm, the quiet recitation of prayers murmuring on their lips as they walked beneath the vast, indifferent sky. Their meager possessions, a simple tunic, perhaps a coarse wool cloak against the chill, and a small, often empty purse, were carried with a profound sense of purpose. Each sunrise on the road was a renewed commitment, each sunset a testament to their unwavering faith. The landscapes blurred into a continuous panorama, a dark forest yielding to an open field, a winding river giving way to a gentle incline. Yet, within this blur, the pilgrims sought an internal stillness, a spiritual focus that transcended the physical discomfort. Their journey was not merely from one place to another, but from the mundane to the sacred, a profound act of devotion carried out one arduous step at a time. The air would carry the scent of wood smoke from distant villages, the faint sweet smell of wild herbs crushed beneath their feet, and perhaps the metallic tang of rain on the horizon. Each of these sensory details, subtle yet persistent, would become part of the indelible memory of their pilgrimage. Merchants, by contrast, were driven by the promise of commerce, by the exchange of goods, and the slow accumulation of wealth. Their journeys were often longer, their burdens heavier, as they transported precious commodities from distant lands, spices from the east, fine textiles from Flanders, wine from France, wool from England. Their caravans, though small by modern standards, would have been a significant sight on the quiet medieval roads. The slow, deliberate pace of their pack horses or mules, laden with bundles wrapped in coarse canvas or sturdy leather. Imagine the jingle of harness bells, the soft, rhythmic clatter of hooves on stony ground, the low murmur of voices exchanging instructions or quiet pleasantries. These merchants were often hardened individuals, accustomed to the rigors of travel, possessing a keen eye for opportunity and an even keener sense of caution. They understood the risks, the lurking shadows in dense woods, the sudden swells of treacherous rivers, the capricious moods of the weather. Their preparations would be meticulous: sturdy carts, well-maintained harnesses, provisions for themselves and their animals, and often a small armed guard, for the wealth they carried was a constant magnet for those who lived outside the law. The air around them might be thick with the scent of their wares, the rich aroma of exotic spices, the earthy smell of bundled wool, or the subtle sweetness of dried fruits. Every creak of the cart, every rustle in the undergrowth would be registered and assessed, for vigilance was as important as their merchandise. Their conversations, often muted, would revolve around market prices, safe routes, and news from distant towns, woven into the gentle rhythm of their slow progress. Messengers, too, were vital arteries in the slow-moving network of medieval communication. They carried letters, decrees, and vital intelligence, their journeys often urgent, demanding swift passage regardless of the conditions. A king's command, a lord's summons, news of a battle, or a plea for aid. These were the burdens they bore. Unlike the pilgrim or the merchant, their purpose was not personal gain or spiritual fulfillment, but the efficient transmission of information. They often rode horses, pushing the animals to their limits, their faces grim, their eyes scanning the horizon for any sign of trouble. Imagine the rapid beat of hooves on the road, the steady thud of a horse's breath, the rush of wind in their ears as they galloped through the countryside. Their clothing would be practical, designed for speed and durability, and they would carry little more than their dispatches, perhaps a small knife for defense, and a meager amount of food. Their paths were often solitary, demanding an intimate knowledge of the landscape and an innate sense of direction. The urgency of their mission would be a constant internal drumbeat, a counterpoint to the quiet solitude of the open road. The scents they encountered would be fleeting, the sounds a blur as they focused relentlessly on their destination, a vital cog in the machinery of medieval governance. Even peasants, tied to the land and their lord, would occasionally find themselves on the road, albeit for shorter distances. Perhaps they travelled to a nearby market to sell surplus produce or acquire essential tools. Perhaps they were summoned by their lord for corvée labour, or journeyed to a local fair, a rare respite from the ceaseless toil of agricultural life. Their reasons were simpler, their needs more fundamental, but the act of travel was no less significant. They walked, always, their feet accustomed to the uneven ground, their backs perhaps bowed under the weight of a basket or a simple sack. Their journeys were marked by the familiar landmarks of their local landscape: a distinct copse of trees, a weathered stone cross, the gentle curve of a river. They knew the shortcuts, the safe crossings, the places where a benevolent farmer might offer a cup of water. Their connection to the earth beneath their feet was profound, each step an extension of their daily existence. The smells would be those of the countryside: freshly tilled soil, the sweet decay of fallen leaves in autumn, the sharp scent of wood smoke from a distant chimney. Their conversations, if any, would be about the harvest, the weather, the small anxieties and joys of village life, all unfolding against the quiet backdrop of the medieval road. Regardless of their purpose, all travellers shared a common preparation: the careful, often sparse gathering of provisions. Food was simple, practical, and designed to endure the rigours of the journey. Bread, dense and unleavened, often baked hard to prevent spoilage, was a staple. It provided sustenance and could be easily carried. Imagine breaking off a piece of this tough, dry bread, perhaps softened by a small piece of cheese, a crucial source of fat and protein. Cheese, too, would be hard, aged to withstand the journey without refrigeration. These were not the delicate cheeses of a modern larder, but robust, flavourful provisions designed for utility. Water was essential, carried in a leather skin or a simple wooden flask, constantly needing replenishment from wells, springs, or sometimes less pure sources. A small purse of coins, perhaps a few pennies or shillings, represented the sum total of one's liquid wealth, carefully guarded against the ever-present threat of theft. This money would be used for rudimentary accommodation, a simple meal at an inn, or the occasional toll demanded by a local lord. The weight of these provisions, though seemingly small, would become increasingly heavy with each passing mile, a constant, tangible reminder of the journey's demands. Choosing a route was a decision often dictated by practicalities and, at times, by necessity. Travellers favoured familiar paths, those that had been trodden for generations, their faint ruts etched into the landscape like ancient scars. Old Roman roads, though often in disrepair, still offered a degree of straightness and a firmer foundation than newly forged tracks. Their enduring presence, even in decay, was a testament to a forgotten age of engineering. Imagine walking along a stretch of one of these ancient roads, the worn stones still visible beneath layers of earth and grass, whispering tales of legions and emperors. These routes, though sometimes longer, offered a sense of reliability. Routes near monasteries or well-established settlements were also preferred, not only for the potential of shelter and sustenance, but also for the relative safety they offered from lurking dangers. The presence of a monastic community often implied a degree of order and a deterrent to those who preyed on solitary travellers. The landscape, largely untamed, often dictated the path, following a river valley, skirting a dense forest, ascending a gentle ridge to avoid marshy ground. There were no detailed maps as we know them. Knowledge of the roads was passed down through generations, a shared understanding of the safest and most efficient ways to navigate the vastness. It was a navigation by intuition, by the subtle signs of the land, by the distant sight of a church spire, or the sound of a barking dog guiding the way. Before departing, many sought blessings for safe passage, acknowledging the inherent dangers and uncertainties of the road. Superstitions intertwined with fervent prayer, creating a spiritual shield against the unseen perils. A small token, a holy relic, a patron saint's medal. These were clutched tightly, offering a fragile comfort against the vastness of the unknown. Imagine the quiet murmur of a prayer in a cold, stone church, the scent of beeswax and old incense lingering in the air, a silent plea for protection against bandits, illness, or the unforgiving elements. Travellers might consult a local wise woman for a charm, or avoid setting out on certain days deemed unlucky. The act of departure itself was often accompanied by rituals, a final meal with family, a shared silence filled with unspoken anxieties and hopes. The door closing behind them was not just a physical barrier, but a symbolic one, separating them from the familiar comforts of home and propelling them into a world that demanded constant vigilance and an unwavering spirit. The road, then, was not merely a physical path, but a spiritual and existential journey, where every step was a testament to human endurance and a profound reliance on forces beyond one's control. The silence of the morning, broken only by the rustle of leaves or the distant call of a bird, would underscore the solitude of their venture. They carried with them not only their meagre possessions, but also the quiet hopes and fears of those they left behind, and the deep, silent prayers for a safe return. The motivations for travel, whether spiritual, commercial, or simply for survival, painted a rich and varied picture of medieval life. Each journey, no matter how short or long, was a narrative in itself, a personal epic against the backdrop of a challenging landscape. The quiet determination of a pilgrim, the shrewd vigilance of a merchant, the focused urgency of a messenger, and the enduring resilience of a peasant, all contributed to the tapestry of movement across a continent. The preparations, simple yet essential, underscored the profound differences between medieval existence and our own. To set out on the medieval road was to embrace uncertainty, to accept discomfort, and to place one's trust in providence and one's own fortitude. It was a profound act of courage, born not of grand adventure, but of the quiet, undeniable necessities of life itself. The subtle, persistent hum of the world around them, the gentle sway of the trees, the distant cries of unseen animals. These were the companions of the medieval traveller, guiding them in their own quiet way towards their unknown destinations. This understanding allows us to quietly reflect on the profound courage and simple endurance that defined such journeys, inviting a gentle calm as we consider the silent landscapes they traversed. Imagine the medieval road not as a smooth, paved thoroughfare we know today, but as a path of constant negotiation, a shifting landscape that demanded every ounce of a traveller's attention and endurance. These were not engineered arteries of commerce, but often little more than rutted tracks, carved out by centuries of foot traffic, animal hooves, and the passage of rudimentary carts. Their condition was entirely at the mercy of the elements, transforming dramatically with each change in weather. In the relentless downpour of autumn or the slow thaw of spring, these tracks became rivers of mud, treacherous quagmires that swallowed hooves and feet alike. With every step, a sucking sound would emanate from the viscous earth, pulling at boots, threatening to engulf an unwary limb. Imagine the effort required to lift a foot from such a sticky embrace, the constant, wearying battle against the mire. The sensation would be one of perpetual struggle, each step a small victory against the clinging, unyielding ground. The air, thick with the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves, would press down, adding to the oppressive atmosphere. The subtle, squelching sounds of movement would fill the quiet, a constant reminder of the difficult passage. Conversely, in the parched grip of summer, these same paths would transform into clouds of choking dust. Each gust of wind, each passing animal, would send fine particles swirling into the air, coating everything in a gritty film. Imagine the dry, rasping sensation in one's throat, the constant irritation in the eyes, the fine powder settling into every crease of clothing and skin. The sun would beat down relentlessly, baking the earth and intensifying the dry, earthy scent. The quiet would be broken by the subtle crunch of dry leaves and twigs underfoot, a stark contrast to the sucking mud, yet equally demanding on the traveller. The monotony of the landscape, often obscured by the swirling dust, would be broken only by the occasional silhouette of a distant tree or a fleeting glimpse of a bird taking flight. This duality of conditions, from bog to dust, presented a relentless challenge, ensuring that no journey was ever truly comfortable, and every step was a testament to sheer perseverance. The distant, almost imperceptible hum of insects in the dry air would be a constant, low-level companion, adding to the feeling of arid expanse. One of the most insidious dangers, particularly in certain regions, was the presence of bogs and marshes. These deceptive stretches of land, often indistinguishable from solid ground to the uninitiated eye, posed a significant threat. A seemingly firm patch of grass could conceal a deep, waterlogged pit, capable of trapping a traveller, a horse, or even a loaded cart. Imagine the sudden terror as one's foot sinks unexpectedly into the cold, black mire, the struggle to pull free, the desperate hope that the ground beneath will eventually offer purchase. The air in such places would be heavy with the scent of stagnant water and decaying vegetation, a damp, earthy smell that spoke of hidden dangers. The quiet, broken only by the distant croaking of frogs or the soft splash of a disturbed insect, would amplify the sense of vulnerability. Losing one's way in these vast, featureless wetlands was a very real possibility, leading to prolonged exposure, exhaustion, and potentially a fatal end. The faint mist that often clung to the surface of these bogs would add to their ethereal, dangerous beauty, making it even harder to discern solid ground from deadly quicksand. The rhythmic, almost hypnotic chirping of unseen creatures would underscore the isolated nature of these perilous environments. Crossing rivers and streams also presented a formidable challenge, for reliable fords were often dangerous, and bridges were a rare luxury, frequently in disrepair or non-existent. A ford, where a river was shallow enough to cross, could become a raging torrent after heavy rains, its current strong enough to sweep away a horse or even a person. Imagine standing at the riverbank, contemplating the churning water, the decision to cross a fearful gamble. The chill of the water, even on a warm day, would be an immediate shock, the current pulling relentlessly at one's legs. The roar of the water, a constant low rumble, would dominate the senses, making communication difficult. Many fords were marked by treacherous, uneven riverbeds, where hidden rocks or sudden drops could cause a painful fall. Bridges, when they existed, were often simple wooden constructions, prone to rot and collapse. Imagine the apprehension of stepping onto a creaking wooden bridge, knowing that a single rotten beam could send you plummeting into the dark water below. The subtle sounds of rushing water beneath a fragile bridge would amplify the sense of precariousness. The scent of fresh water and damp wood would fill the air, a fleeting comfort before the renewed anxieties of the journey. Every river crossing was an act of faith, a moment of heightened vulnerability, where the forces of nature asserted their undeniable power. Perhaps one of the most persistent and universally experienced hardships of medieval travel was the relentless torment of blisters. Most people walked, and they walked for extended periods, often in ill-fitting or poorly constructed shoes. Leather, the primary material, was stiff and unforgiving, offering little comfort or support. Imagine the dull ache that begins in the early hours of a journey, slowly intensifying into a sharp, stinging pain as the skin rubs raw against the coarse material. Each step would become an agony, transforming the simple act of walking into a relentless test of endurance. The pressure points on the feet, the heels, the balls of the feet, the spaces between the toes, all would become inflamed, red, and eventually blistered. A single large blister could render a journey unbearable, slowing progress to a painful crawl, or even forcing a halt. Imagine the relief, fleeting as it might be, of removing one's shoes at the end of a long day, only to reveal the raw, broken skin beneath. The subtle, painful throbbing of injured feet would be a constant companion, especially during moments of rest. The quiet murmur of fatigue would settle over the body, a deep weariness that seeped into the bones. There were no padded insoles, no breathable fabrics, no specialized hiking boots. Just the relentless friction of leather against skin, mile after agonizing mile. The pain was a constant, intimate companion, a physical manifestation of the journey's demands, serving as a quiet, relentless reminder of the body's limits. The cumulative effect of these physical hardships was a pervasive sense of weariness that permeated every aspect of medieval travel. It was not merely the tiredness of a long day, but a deep, bone-aching exhaustion that seeped into the very core of one's being. Imagine the heavy eyelids at dawn, the sluggishness of limbs, the difficulty of rousing oneself for another day of relentless walking. The cold dampness of the morning air would offer little invigoration, only a chilling reminder of the discomforts to come. The body, constantly under strain, would crave rest, but rest was a luxury often denied by the demands of the journey. Hunger pangs, often dull and persistent, would gnaw at the stomach, a constant companion on the long stretches between villages. Thirst, especially in the summer months, could be agonizing, leading to parched throats and a desperate search for water. The simple act of breathing, especially when ascending a gentle incline, would become a conscious effort, lungs burning with exertion. The lack of proper hygiene, coupled with exposure to the elements and communal living in inns or crowded shelters, also made travelers particularly susceptible to illness. A common cold could quickly escalate into a debilitating fever. A festering cut could lead to a life-threatening infection. Imagine the chills that rack a body, the feverish dreams in a rough, uncomfortable bed, the quiet fear that sickness could bring a journey to an abrupt and tragic end. There were no doctors readily available on the open road, no pharmacies, no quick remedies. Healing was often left to time, prayer, and the body's own resilience. The quiet, almost imperceptible cough that would develop over days, or the subtle ache in the joints that grew into a full-blown malaise, these were the insidious threats that stalked the weary traveller. The vulnerability to disease added another layer of anxiety to an already arduous undertaking, reinforcing the fragility of life on the open road. Distances that seem laughably short to us today could take days, even weeks, to traverse on foot. A journey of just 50 miles, which a modern vehicle could cover in an hour, might consume 3 or 4 days of relentless walking for a medieval traveller. Imagine the vastness of the landscape, the slow, deliberate progression across fields, through forests and over hills. Each landmark, each small village passed, would be a hard-won marker of progress. The concept of speed was entirely different. It was measured in sunrises and sunsets, in the slow, rhythmic swing of the legs, in the gradual unfolding of the horizon. There was no escaping the physical reality of distance, no mechanical means to accelerate the passage of time. The sheer scale of the journey would imprint itself on the traveller's mind, a quiet testament to the enduring power of human locomotion. The subtle shift of light as the sun moved across the sky, marking the passage of hours, would be a silent, constant companion. The ever-present threat of violence, while not a physical characteristic of the road itself, was an unseen danger that shaped every journey. Bandits lurked in dense woods or along lonely stretches of road, preying on vulnerable travellers. The fear of ambush was a constant, low-level hum of anxiety, especially when passing through isolated areas. Imagine the subtle tensing of muscles, the heightened awareness of every rustle in the undergrowth, every distant sound that could signal danger. Travelling alone was a particular risk, making one an easy target. Therefore, many preferred to travel in groups, seeking the relative safety that numbers afforded. The companionship, though sometimes quiet, offered a subtle comfort, a shared vigilance against the unseen threats. The occasional whispered conversation about local dangers or recent attacks would serve as a grim reminder of the ever-present peril. The visual landscape, though often beautiful, was also inherently dangerous. The shadows of the trees concealing potential threats, the quiet stretches amplifying every sudden sound. This constant vigilance added another layer of mental exhaustion to the physical demands. The mind, perpetually alert to potential dangers, could never truly rest, even when the body was still. The rhythmic creak of a cart, the gentle sway of a horse's gait, the crunch of gravel underfoot. These familiar sounds were punctuated by moments of acute awareness, where every shadow, every rustle, every distant sound was scrutinized for signs of threat. The mental landscape of the medieval traveller was one of perpetual preparedness, a quiet tension that rarely dissipated. This psychological toll was as significant as the physical demands, contributing to the deep, pervasive weariness that defined long-distance travel. The quiet, almost imperceptible thrum of adrenaline would be a constant, low-level companion, ready to surge at the slightest hint of danger. Despite these overwhelming challenges, life on the road was not without its moments of simple beauty and quiet wonder. The vast, unspoiled landscapes, free from the visual clutter of modernity, offered a profound connection to the natural world. Imagine the unbroken canopy of stars on a clear night, far from any light pollution, each constellation a brilliant jewel against the velvet blackness. The scent of pine needles, the crispness of the night air, the distant hoot of an owl. These were the quiet luxuries of open-air travel. The rhythm of walking, though physically demanding, could also be meditative, allowing the mind to wander and to find a quiet focus. The subtle variations in the landscape, a sudden vista of rolling hills, the gentle murmur of a hidden stream, the vibrant colours of wildflowers in a meadow, offered fleeting moments of solace and beauty. These quiet observations, often made in solitude, became precious memories, small treasures gleaned from the arduous journey. The simple, unadulterated beauty of the world around them, often unnoticed in the rush of modern life, would offer a profound, grounding presence. The medieval road, therefore, was a harsh tutor, instructing its travellers in resilience, patience, and the fundamental realities of their existence. It stripped away pretensions, reduced life to its basic elements: food, water, shelter, and the relentless forward motion. It was a crucible of experience, forging hardy individuals accustomed to discomfort and danger. Yet, within its relentless demands, it also offered a unique perspective, a slow, intimate communion with the land, and an appreciation for the smallest comforts. It was a world where progress was measured not in miles per hour, but in the enduring strength of the human spirit, traversing a landscape that was both a constant adversary and an occasional quiet companion. The silence of the vast open spaces, punctuated only by the sounds of their own passage, would become a profound and enduring memory, a testament to the quiet strength required to navigate such a world. As the medieval traveller pressed onward through the mud and dust, past the treacherous bogs and across the unforgiving rivers, an unseen shadow often stretched ahead of them, a silent companion to their weary steps. This was the ever-present threat of bandits and outlaws, individuals or groups who preyed upon those who ventured onto the open road. The vast, untamed wilderness that bordered many of these paths offered perfect hiding places, a natural theatre for ambush and deceit. Imagine the quiet apprehension that would settle over a traveller as they approached a dense forest or a particularly isolated stretch of road. The beauty of the towering trees and the dappled sunlight would be tinged with a subtle, gnawing fear. For within those natural confines, danger often lurked. The rustle of leaves, which in other circumstances might be a comforting sound, could become a sudden, heart-stopping signal of unseen movement. The air might carry the familiar scent of damp earth and decaying wood, but it would also feel heavy with unspoken tension. Bandits, often desperate men driven by poverty, landlessness, or a life outside the law, would hide in these natural ambush points, waiting patiently for vulnerable travelers to pass. Forests, with their thick undergrowth and winding paths, were ideal for such clandestine operations. Imagine a traveler, perhaps a lone merchant with a valuable pack, or a small group of pilgrims, their quiet conversations barely audible over the crunch of their footsteps. Suddenly, from the shadowy depths of the woods, figures emerge, rough-clad, often armed with crude weapons, cudgels, axes, perhaps a rusty sword. The quiet of the road would be shattered by harsh demands, the immediate stark reality of a threat. The shift from peaceful travel to sudden confrontation would be jarring, a brutal interruption of the journey's gentle rhythm. There would be no escape, no negotiation, only the cold, hard reality of their demands. The scent of pine and damp earth would mingle with the metallic tang of fear in the air. The silence that followed the initial shock would be profound, broken only by the heavy breathing of the victims and the gruff commands of the assailants. The solitary traveller was, of course, the easiest prey. A lone pilgrim, perhaps lost in quiet contemplation, or a messenger hurrying with a vital dispatch, presented an irresistible target. Without the protection of numbers, without the deterrent of multiple watchful eyes, they were utterly exposed. Imagine the chilling solitude of walking alone on a long, winding road, the distant sound of a bird's call amplifying the profound sense of isolation. Every shadow would seem to stretch. Every unexpected sound would cause a jolt of alarm. The knowledge that help was miles away, that no one would witness their plight, would deepen the sense of vulnerability. This acute awareness of being alone, of being utterly responsible for one's own safety, was a heavy burden, adding another layer of a mental strain to the physical demands of the journey. The quiet whisper of the wind through the trees could take on an ominous tone, carrying with it the phantom sounds of approaching danger. Groups, even small ones, offered some measure of protection. A band of merchants, their pack animals laden with goods, might travel with a few armed guards. Pilgrims might band together for mutual safety, their shared purpose and common vulnerability creating a fragile bond. Imagine a group of travelers huddled together at night, the small flickering light of their campfire casting dancing shadows into the surrounding darkness. Each person would take turns keeping watch, their eyes scanning the unseen perimeter, their ears straining for any unnatural sound. The subtle crackle of the fire and the low murmur of quiet conversation would be the only sounds breaking the vast silence of the night. There was strength in numbers, if not always enough to repel a determined attack, then at least enough to make a bandit think twice, to seek an easier target. The shared anxiety, though unspoken, would bind them together, creating a silent understanding of the precariousness of their situation. The faint scent of wood smoke and damp earth would cling to their clothes, a persistent reminder of their exposed state. The dangers of the road were not always as overt as a sudden ambush. Some bandits employed trickery, disguising themselves as legitimate toll collectors or officials. In a world without widespread literacy, without easily verifiable identification, such deception was remarkably effective. Imagine approaching a seemingly official roadblock, a rough barrier strung across the road, guarded by figures in what appeared to be official livery. The demand for a toll would seem legitimate, a common occurrence on medieval roads, where local lords often exacted payments for passage through their lands. Only after the money had been handed over, or perhaps after a deeper, more sinister demand was made, would the traveller realise the cruel deception. The moment of realisation, the sudden chilling understanding of their vulnerability, would be a profound shock. The quiet of the rural road would be punctuated by the terse, demanding voices of the fake collectors, their authority seemingly legitimate until the mask slipped. The bitter taste of betrayal, combined with the loss of their precious few coins, would be a heavy burden to bear. This subtle form of deceit added a layer of psychological complexity to the journey, for even seemingly legitimate encounters could conceal a hidden danger. The air would be filled with the subtle tension of apprehension, a sense of unease that lingered long after the encounter. The medieval traveller was constantly engaged in a dangerous gamble, weighing the risk of slower but potentially safer paths near towns and villages against the allure of faster but wilder routes. The desire for speed, for reaching one's destination quickly, was a powerful motivator, especially for merchants with perishable goods or messengers with urgent dispatches. But these wilder routes, cutting through vast forests or desolate moorlands, were precisely where outlaws found their sanctuary. Imagine the internal debate. A day or two lost, but the relative security of passing through settled lands, or a potentially faster journey, but with the constant, gnawing fear of ambush. The decision was never easy, a calculation of risk versus reward, often made with incomplete information. Rumours of recent attacks, whispered warnings from other travellers in a roadside inn, or the distant sight of a suspicious group of riders, all would feed into this complex calculation. The subtle rhythmic creak of a wagon wheel or the steady thud of horse hooves would underscore the relentless forward motion, each mile a step further into or out of potential danger. The quiet determination to reach their goal would override the inherent fears, driving them onward. The very landscape itself, while offering refuge to bandits, also presented its own form of silent danger. Dense woods, with their low light and tangled undergrowth, could easily conceal a dozen men. Rocky passes, narrowing the road to a single file, created perfect choke points for an ambush. Imagine the unsettling silence of a deep forest, the canopy so thick that only slivers of sunlight penetrate, casting long, distorted shadows. The air, heavy with the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves, would feel close and oppressive. Every snap of a twig, every rustle in the bushes would be amplified, drawing the eye and sharpening the senses. The feeling of being watched, even if no one was there, would be a constant, unsettling presence. The natural world, so often a source of quiet beauty, became a partner in the perils of the road, its features exploited by those who sought to harm. The faint, almost imperceptible sound of an unseen bird call would add to the eerie atmosphere of these secluded places. The consequences of an encounter with bandits could range from mere robbery to brutal violence, or even death. Lives were brutally cut short, possessions were lost, and the physical and emotional scars of such an encounter could last a lifetime. Imagine the fear, the desperation, the immediate loss of all that one possessed, or worse, the silent, terrifying realization of a mortal threat. The battlefield was a horrifying tableau of fallen men, but so too could a quiet forest path become a scene of unexpected, brutal violence. The descriptions of violence are not for sensationalism, but to acknowledge the grim realities of medieval life. We describe the impact of bloodshed or suffering, rather than the graphic details. The focus remains on the consequences and the experience for the traveller, the profound shift from a state of hopeful journeying to one of utter devastation. The quiet sounds of the aftermath, the mournful cries of a companion, or the terrifying silence of absolute solitude would echo in the memory. Yet, amidst this grim reality, there was also a quiet resilience, a grim determination to continue. For many, the choice was not whether to travel, but how to do so with the greatest possible measure of safety. This meant cultivating a keen awareness of their surroundings, developing an almost instinctive sense of potential danger. It meant choosing companions wisely, preferring those with a known reputation for courage or a shared willingness to defend themselves. It meant learning the subtle signs of the road, the places where bandits were known to lurk, the routes to avoid. This quiet, learned wisdom was passed down from experienced travelers to novices, a shared body of knowledge designed for survival. The rhythmic crunch of footsteps on the road, even after a traumatic encounter, would signal the slow, painful process of moving forward. The threat of bandits also fostered a sense of community among travelers. Strangers encountering each other on the road would often choose to journey together for a time, finding comfort and safety in shared numbers. Imagine the quiet camaraderie that would develop between such disparate individuals, drawn together by common vulnerability. A shared meal by a roadside fire, a whispered warning about a dangerous stretch ahead, a collective sigh of relief upon reaching a safe haven. These small moments of connection softened the harsh edges of the journey. The low murmur of conversation, often about the dangers faced or the roads ahead, would be a constant background hum. In a world where danger was a constant companion, mutual aid became a vital form of protection, a quiet act of human solidarity against the forces of lawlessness. The faint scent of wood smoke from a shared fire, or the subtle aroma of simple food, would be woven into these fleeting moments of shared humanity. Ultimately, the shadow of bandits and outlaws was an integral part of the medieval travel experience. It shaped routes, influenced decisions, and instilled a constant, low-level anxiety that never truly dissipated until the journey's end. It was a reminder that the wildness of the landscape was mirrored by the wildness of certain human hearts, and that venturing beyond the safety of settled communities meant entering a world where law and order were often distant ideals. Yet, even in the face of such peril, the call of the road, whether for faith, commerce, or survival, remained too strong to resist. The quiet determination to overcome these threats, to persist in the face of adversity, speaks to the profound resilience of the medieval spirit. The subtle, persistent rustle of unseen life in the surrounding environment would serve as a constant reminder of the untamed world they traversed, a world both beautiful and profoundly dangerous. After long, arduous hours spent battling the mud, enduring the dust, and navigating the quiet anxieties of unseen threats, the sight of a distant wisp of smoke, or the faint outline of a building against the horizon, would stir a profound sense of relief in the medieval traveller. This was the promise of shelter, a temporary respite from the relentless demands of the open road. For many, this sanctuary came in the form of an inn, a monastery, or failing all else, a rough, improvised camp under the vast, indifferent sky. Imagine the quiet joy that would spread through a weary body as the possibility of rest became a tangible reality, the almost imperceptible loosening of muscles that had been tensed for hours. The air, though still carrying the scents of the road, would now be tinged with the faint promise of warmth and safety. The welcome of an inn, though often rudimentary by modern standards, was a profound comfort to the exhausted traveller. These establishments, typically found in market towns or along major thoroughfares, offered a brief return to the comforts of human society. Imagine pushing open a heavy, creaking wooden door, stepping from the chill of the outside world into a dimly lit, often smoky common room. The air would be thick with a mingled sense of wood smoke, roasting meat, stale ale, and the unwashed bodies of other travellers. The low hum of conversation, the clatter of tankards, and perhaps the distant strumming of a simple stringed instrument would fill the space, a comforting cacophony after the quiet solitude of the road. Food at an inn was simple, hearty, and designed to sustain. A traveller might be offered a trencher of stew, thick with whatever vegetables and meat were available, served with a hunk of coarse bread. Imagine the taste of the warm, savoury stew, the feeling of real nourishment after days of dry provisions. Ale, often weak but abundant, would quench a thirst that water alone could not satisfy. The feeling of warmth spreading through the body, displacing the chill of the journey, would be a profound relief. The company of strangers, though often fleeting, provided a sense of connection. Travellers would gather around a communal table, exchanging news, gossiping about events in distant towns, and, most importantly, sharing warnings about the road ahead. A merchant might speak of a recent bandit attack, a pilgrim might recount a treacherous river crossing, a messenger might hint at political unrest. These tavern tales were a vital source of information, shaping decisions about routes and timing. The quiet clinking of pewter tankards and the low rumble of voices would be the background to these vital exchanges. The beds in medieval inns were far from luxurious. Often, they were hard mattresses stuffed with straw or hay, laid out in communal sleeping areas. Privacy was a rare commodity. Imagine settling onto a rough, unyielding surface, the faint rustle of straw beneath you, the sounds of other sleepers, snores, coughs, the occasional murmur, would fill the dormitory. Yet despite the discomfort, the mere fact of being indoors, protected from the elements and the dangers of the night, was a blessing. The body, accustomed to the rhythmic thud of walking, would slowly begin to unwind, even on a hard bed. The darkness of the room, punctuated only by the faint glow of embers from a communal hearth, would offer a profound sense of security after the vast, open blackness of the road. The subtle, earthy scent of the straw and the warmth of the communal room would gradually lull the weary traveller towards a restless sleep. For those whose journeys took them near religious houses, monastic hospitality offered a different, often more structured, form of refuge. Monasteries, with their vows of charity and their role as centres of learning and succour, often provided lodging and sustenance to travellers. Imagine approaching the imposing walls of an abbey, the sound of distant bells marking the canonical hours, a profound sense of peace emanating from within. The welcome here might be quieter, more reserved, but no less sincere. Guests would typically be housed in a guest house, separate from the cloistered monks, but still benefiting from the monastery's resources. The atmosphere would be one of quiet contemplation, a stark contrast to the boisterousness of an inn. The air would carry the subtle scent of old parchment, beeswax candles, and the faint, clean smell of stone. Food would be simple, often vegetarian, in accordance with monastic rules, but wholesome and nourishing. Bread, often baked in the monastery's own ovens, fresh vegetables from their gardens, and perhaps a thin gruel or cheese would be offered. Imagine the quiet satisfaction of a meal eaten in solemn silence, the sounds of distant chanting or the rustle of robes the only interruptions. Monasteries also offered spiritual comfort, a place for prayer and reflection after the trials of the road. For pilgrims, this was an extension of their journey's purpose, a reinforcement of their faith. For others, it was simply a moment of quiet solace, a chance to regain mental composure amidst the journey's demands. The low, resonant sound of monastic chants, often heard faintly through stone walls, would be a calming, almost hypnotic background. However, space in monasteries was often limited, especially for common travellers. Priority might be given to other clergy, noblemen, or those on official business. If the guest house was full, or if the monastery was particularly austere, a traveller might be turned away. This uncertainty added another layer of anxiety to the planning of a journey, for a denied welcome could mean facing the harsh realities of the open country at night. The quiet disappointment of being refused entry, despite the need for rest, would be a heavy burden to bear. When both inns and monasteries failed to provide shelter, or when the traveller's path simply took them too far from any settled habitation, the only option was to sleep under the stars. This was the most vulnerable form of rest, fraught with dangers from wild animals, human predators, and the unforgiving elements. Imagine finding a secluded spot, perhaps beneath the sheltering branches of a large tree, or nestled into a hollow that offered some protection from the wind. The ground would be hard, uneven, and often damp. A traveller would huddle within their cloak, seeking what little warmth it could provide, perhaps sharing the meagre heat of their own body with a loyal pack animal. The vast, inky blackness of the night sky, punctuated by the brilliant pinpricks of distant stars, would be both awe-inspiring and terrifying. The cold seeped into bones, the ground offered no comfort, and every rustle in the surrounding darkness would send a jolt of fear through the weary body. The soft, rhythmic breathing of a nearby animal would be a reassuring, if small, comfort in the vast silence. The sounds of the night would be amplified in the quiet solitude, the distant hoot of an owl, the rustle of unseen creatures in the undergrowth, the mournful cry of a fox. These were the lullabies of the truly exposed traveller, constant reminders of their precarious situation. A small fire, if resources allowed, would offer a brief illusion of safety, its flickering light casting dancing shadows that both comforted and distorted. The scent of wood smoke, clinging to clothes, would be a constant reminder of these nights. But even a fire attracted attention, potentially drawing unwanted visitors. The profound sense of vulnerability, combined with the crushing fatigue of the day, often led to a restless, fitful sleep, constantly interrupted by discomfort or imagined dangers. The quiet chirping of unseen crickets, or the gentle hum of night insects, would fill the vast expanse of the night, adding to the feeling of solitude. These moments of rest, whether in the relative comfort of an inn, the quiet sanctity of a monastery, or the raw exposure of the open wilderness, were crucial junctures in any medieval journey. They were not merely periods of physical recovery, but also opportunities for mental and spiritual replenishment. The shared stories in an inn provided crucial intelligence, shaping the next leg of the journey. The quiet contemplation in a monastery offered a chance to reconnect with purpose. The stark reality of sleeping under the open sky reinforced the fundamental vulnerabilities of human existence. Each type of shelter, or lack thereof, offered a unique lens through which to view the hardships and the brief, fleeting comforts of medieval road travel. The profound silence of the natural world, broken only by the gentle sounds of the wind or distant animals, would underscore the solitude of their temporary resting places. The inns, particularly, served as vital social hubs, miniature microcosms of the larger medieval world. Beyond just offering a bed and food, they were conduits of information, places where news, rumours, and warnings flowed freely. Imagine the quiet intensity of a traveller leaning in to catch a whispered conversation about a recent skirmish, or the price of wool in a distant market town. These were the newspapers of the age, delivered by word of mouth, shaping perceptions and guiding decisions. The low murmur of discussion, the occasional burst of raucous laughter, or the quiet, shared anxiety about the road ahead, all contributed to the rich tapestry of sounds that filled these spaces. The sense of cheap ale, stale food, and unwashed bodies mingled, creating an unforgettable aroma that spoke of humanity in its rawest form. The fleeting connections made in these roadside establishments were also significant. Travellers from different walks of life, a humble peasant, a wealthy merchant, a returning soldier, a wandering scholar might find themselves sharing a bench, bound by the common thread of their journey. While their destinations and purposes differed, their immediate need for rest and safety created a temporary equality. These brief encounters, though often nameless and fleeting, offered small glimpses into the wider world, broadening horizons in an age when most people lived and died within a few miles of their birth. The quiet, almost imperceptible shift in one's perspective gained from these encounters would be a lasting, if subtle, impact of the journey. Ultimately, the search for shelter was a continuous thread woven throughout the narrative of medieval road travel. It underscored the profound fragility of human life in a largely untamed world, and the constant negotiation between vulnerability and the desperate need for security. Whether it was the rough camaraderie of an inn, the quiet solace of a monastery, or the stark exposure of the open wilderness, each moment of rest was a hard-won victory against the relentless demands of the road. These temporary havens were not just physical spaces, but psychological anchors, allowing the weary soul to briefly unfurl before facing the next stretch of unpredictable journey. The gentle sounds of the night, whether human or natural, would be a constant reminder of the world continuing its quiet rotation, even as the traveller sought their brief period of repose. The faint, earthy scent of damp straw or the clean smell of stone would be the lasting memory of these brief, vital pauses. Each type of shelter, or lack thereof, offered a unique lens through which to view the hardships and the brief, fleeting comforts of medieval road travel. The profound silence of the natural world, broken only by the gentle sounds of the wind or distant animals, would underscore the solitude of their temporary resting places. The inns, particularly, served as vital social hubs, miniature microcosms of the larger medieval world. Beyond just offering a bed and food, they were conduits of information, places where news, rumours, and warnings flowed freely. Imagine the quiet intensity of a traveller leaning in to catch a whispered conversation about a recent skirmish, or the price of wool in a distant market town. These were the newspapers of the age, delivered by word of mouth, shaping perceptions and guiding decisions. The low murmur of discussion, the occasional burst of raucous laughter, or the quiet, shared anxiety about the road ahead, all contributed to the rich tapestry of sounds that filled these spaces. The sense of cheap ale, stale food, and unwashed bodies mingled, creating an unforgettable aroma that spoke of humanity in its rawest form. The fleeting connections made in these roadside establishments were also significant. Travelers from different walks of life, a humble peasant, a wealthy merchant, a returning soldier, a wandering scholar, might find themselves sharing a bench, bound by the common thread of their journey. While their destinations and purposes differed, their immediate need for rest and safety created a temporary equality. These brief encounters, though often nameless and fleeting, offered small glimpses into the wider world, broadening horizons in an age when most people lived and died within a few miles of their birth. The quiet, almost imperceptible shift in one's perspective gained from these encounters would be a lasting, if subtle, impact of the journey. Ultimately, the search for shelter was a continuous thread woven throughout the narrative of medieval road travel. It underscored the profound fragility of human life in a largely untamed world, and the constant negotiation between vulnerability and the desperate need for security. Whether it was the rough camaraderie of an inn, the quiet solace of a monastery, or the stark exposure of the open wilderness, each moment of rest was a hard-won victory against the relentless demands of the road. These temporary havens were not just physical spaces, but psychological anchors, allowing the weary soul to briefly unfurl before facing the next stretch of unpredictable journey. The gentle sounds of the night, whether human or natural, would be a constant reminder of the world continuing its quiet rotation, even as the traveller sought their brief period of repose. The faint, earthy scent of damp straw or the clean smell of stone would be the lasting memory of these brief vital pauses. Illness on the road was a constant, terrifying threat. Without access to modern medicine, even a common cold could escalate into a life-threatening fever. A simple cut could fester into a debilitating infection. Communal sleeping arrangements in inns, exposure to contaminated water, and the weakened state of a weary body all contributed to the risk. Imagine the chills and shakes of a fever, the painful cough that racked the body, the quiet fear of collapsing by the roadside, far from any help. There was no one to diagnose, no effective remedies beyond folk cures and fervent prayer. Many journeys were cut short or tragically ended by ailments that today would be easily treated. The quiet, laboured breathing of a sick companion or the terrifying silence of one too weak to speak would be a profound and chilling sound. The faint metallic scent of illness would permeate the air around the afflicted. The cumulative effect of these adversities, the weather, the physical burdens, the hunger, the thirst, and the ever-present threat of illness, was a deep, pervasive weariness that seeped into the very bones. It was not just physical exhaustion, but a profound mental and emotional drain. Imagine the heavy eyelids at dawn, the sluggishness of limbs, the overwhelming desire for just one more hour of sleep. The spirit, too, became weary, burdened by the constant vigilance, the unyielding discomfort, and the knowledge of the long, unpredictable miles ahead. The sounds of fatigue would be subtle, a sigh, a slow, dragging footstep, the soft murmur of complaint. These factors fundamentally altered the perception of distance. Journeys that seem laughably short to us today could consume days, even weeks, of relentless effort. A mere 50 miles, traversable in less than an hour by modern vehicle, might require 3 or 4 days of grueling travel on foot, or horseback in medieval times. Imagine the vastness of the landscape, the slow, deliberate progression across fields, through forests and over hills. Each landmark, each small village passed, was a hard-won marker of progress, a testament to the sheer physical effort expended. The concept of speed was entirely different. It was measured in sunrises and sunsets, in the rhythmic swing of the legs, in the gradual unfolding of the horizon. There was no escaping the physical reality of distance, no mechanical means to accelerate the passage of time. The sheer scale of the journey would imprint itself on the traveller's mind, a quiet testament to the enduring power of human locomotion. The quiet passage of the sun across the sky, marking the slow advance of time, would be the only consistent measure of progress. This slow march of time, while physically demanding, also fostered a unique relationship with the landscape. Every hill, every river, every copse of trees became intimately known, etched into memory through lived experience. The traveller observed the subtle changes in flora and fauna, the shifting patterns of light and shadow, the unique sounds of each region. This deep engagement with the natural world, born of necessity and prolonged exposure, created a profound sense of connection that is largely lost in our rapid transit world. The quiet beauty of a rising mist in a valley, the sudden flight of a startled bird, the distant murmur of a hidden stream. These were the details that filled the long hours, becoming intertwined with the arduous nature of the journey. The scent of wild herbs crushed underfoot, or the damp, earthy smell of a forest would become part of the indelible memory of the journey. Ultimately, the medieval traveller's journey was a constant negotiation with the elements, a relentless battle against weariness, and a profound testament to the resilience of the human spirit. The road was a crucible, forging hardy individuals accustomed to discomfort and danger, teaching them patience and endurance. Despite the profound hardships, the motivations for travel, whether spiritual devotion, the promise of commerce, or the simple necessity of survival, were strong enough to compel individuals to face these immense challenges. The quiet determination to reach their destination, inch by agonizing inch, speaks volumes about the human capacity for perseverance. The subtle, continuous sounds of the natural world, the distant calls of animals, the rustle of leaves, would serve as a constant reminder of the untamed world they traversed. A world both beautiful and profoundly challenging. This understanding allows us to quietly reflect on the immense courage and simple endurance that define such journeys, inviting a gentle calm as we consider the silent landscapes they traversed and the quiet strength it took to conquer them. For the medieval traveller, the journey's end was a moment of profound significance, a release from the constant vigilance and relentless discomfort of the road. It was a culmination of endurance, a hard-won victory against the elements, the dangers, and the sheer physical demands of travel. The first glimpse of a town's silhouette against the horizon, the distant sight of a church spire piercing the sky, or the faint, almost imperceptible murmur of human activity would ignite a quiet surge of relief and anticipation within the weary soul. Imagine the feeling of a heavy burden slowly lifting from your shoulders, the gradual relaxation of muscles that had been tensed for days or weeks. The air might still carry the scent of the countryside, but it would now mingle with the promise of wood smoke from many chimneys, the faint aroma of cooked food, and the distinct, comforting smell of human habitation. The subtle sounds of distant life, a barking dog, the shouts of children, the clang of a blacksmith's hammer, would filter through the air, signaling the return to a world of order and community. The sight of city walls, formidable and protective, was particularly reassuring. These towering structures, often visible from miles away, represented safety, civilization, and the definitive end of the perilous open road. To pass through a fortified gate, leaving the untamed wilderness behind, was a symbolic crossing from vulnerability to security. Imagine the feeling of stepping onto paved streets, however rough, after weeks of mud or dust, the satisfying sound of your footsteps echoing differently in the enclosed space. The density of buildings, the proximity of other people, the presence of guards at the gate, all contributed to a profound sense of peace. The air within the walls would be thicker, more complex, carrying the concentrated sense of human activity. Refuse, cooking, leather, and perhaps the faint, sweet smell of a baker's oven. The quiet hum of city life, a constant, low-level background sound, would be a welcome change from the stark solitude of the road. Upon entering a town or city, the traveller's first priority was often to find a suitable place to rest and recover. For those with means, a better inn would be sought, offering a more comfortable bed, perhaps even a private room, and a more substantial meal. Imagine the luxury of a clean basin of water, the feel of fresh, dry clothes against the skin, the deep satisfaction of a hot, well-prepared meal served at a proper table, the quiet contentment of eating without the constant awareness of immediate danger would be profound. For the less fortunate, a more modest lodging, or perhaps the hospitality of a sympathetic commoner, would suffice. Even a simple corner in a stable, out of the elements, felt like a haven after nights spent under the open sky. The body, accustomed to constant motion, would gradually begin to unwind, allowing for a deeper, more restorative sleep. The pervasive silence of genuine rest, undisturbed by the anxieties of the road, would be a cherished experience. For merchants, the journey's end was the beginning of their business. They would head to the bustling markets, eager to unload their goods and negotiate prices. Imagine the vibrant chaos of a medieval market square, the shouts of vendors, the haggling of buyers, the bleating of livestock, the mingled scents of spices, fresh produce, and animal dung. This was the commercial heart of the town, where goods from distant lands converged and wealth exchanged hands. The subtle rustle of fabric, the clink of coins, and the low murmur of countless conversations would fill the air, creating a rich tapestry of sound. The satisfaction of a successful transaction, the relief of having completed a perilous journey with goods intact, would be a powerful reward for their hardships. The opportunity to finally acquire necessities or luxuries that were unavailable on the road would also be a quiet pleasure. Pilgrims, having reached their sacred destination, would proceed directly to the shrine or cathedral they had so ardently sought. Imagine the awe of standing before a revered relic, the hushed reverence of the crowd, the flickering glow of countless candles. The scent of old stone, incense, and melted wax would fill the air, creating a palpable sense of sanctity. This was the culmination of their spiritual quest, a moment of profound personal significance. The physical discomforts of the journey would fade into the background, overshadowed by the spiritual fulfillment. Many would spend days in prayer and contemplation, resting their weary bodies while nurturing their souls. The soft murmur of prayers, the distant sounds of church bells, and the quiet shuffling of other devotees would create an atmosphere of serene devotion. For messengers, the journey's end was the swift delivery of their dispatches. They would seek out the Lord, the king, or the official to whom their vital information was addressed, often with little time for rest. Their mission concluded, they might receive a small payment or a brief commendation before the next urgent task called them back to the road. Their relief was often fleeting, quickly replaced by the next demand. The quiet, urgent delivery of their message, often in hushed tones, would mark the end of their particular burden. For peasants, a visit to a market town or a local fair was a rare and exciting event. It was a chance to sell a few surplus chickens or a basket of eggs, to acquire a new tool, or simply to witness the wider world beyond their village. Imagine the simple pleasure of seeing new faces, hearing new sounds, tasting unfamiliar foods. It was a break from the ceaseless rhythm of agricultural life, a brief immersion in a world of greater variety and possibility. The quiet wonder in their eyes, the subtle shift in their posture from weariness to curiosity would be palpable. Regardless of their purpose, every journey left an indelible mark on the traveler. The physical scars, the calloused feet, the sun-darkened skin, the lingering aches were a testament to the body's resilience. But the deeper impact was often internal. The experience of facing hardship, of overcoming fear, of relying on one's own fortitude or the kindness of strangers, fostered a quiet strength and a deeper understanding of the world. Imagine the stories that would be shared around a hearth after a journey's end. Tales of treacherous bogs, close calls with bandits, unexpected acts of generosity, or the quiet beauty of a sunrise over a distant mountain. These tavern tales, or hearthside sagas, became part of the oral history of communities, shaping perceptions of the wider world and reinforcing the value of home. The rhythmic crackle of the fire, the low murmur of shared stories, and the quiet laughter of listeners would create a comforting atmosphere of connection. The traveller, once returned, was often subtly changed. Their perspective broadened, their appreciation for the comforts of home deepened, and their understanding of their own resilience affirmed. The world, once confined to the familiar boundaries of their village, had expanded, revealing both its dangers and its unexpected moments of beauty and human connection. The quiet contemplation of these experiences, often in solitude, would lead to a deeper understanding of themselves and their place in the world. The sounds of their home, the familiar creak of a floorboard, the gentle ticking of a clock, the soft voices of loved ones, would now carry a renewed sense of preciousness. As the traveller settled back into the routines of daily life, the memory of the road would slowly begin to transform. The raw discomfort would soften, becoming a backdrop to the moments of quiet beauty, the unexpected kindnesses, and the profound satisfaction of having completed a challenging undertaking. The road, once an antagonist, would become a teacher, a source of enduring lessons about perseverance and the human spirit. The distant sounds of the outside world, once threatening, would now be filtered through the lens of newfound security, becoming a gentle reminder of the journey's triumph. And then, as one traveller's journey ended, the road would once again stretch out, quiet and empty, awaiting the next weary footstep, the next creaking cart, the next silent pilgrim. The cycle of movement, driven by necessity, faith, and commerce, would continue, an enduring rhythm of life in the medieval world. The dust would settle, the mud would dry, and the forests would once again hold their secrets, waiting for the next brave soul to venture forth. The subtle, persistent hum of the natural world, unbroken by human intervention, would reclaim the space, waiting for the next chapter of human endeavour. The air, crisp and clean, would carry the faint scent of distant fields and forests, a quiet invitation to the next journey. The road, then, was not merely a physical path, but a living entity, constantly receiving and releasing those who dared to traverse its ancient, challenging expanse. This final, lingering image of the quiet, empty road, stretching into the misty distance, invites a sense of profound calm, a peaceful contemplation of the enduring human spirit and the timeless rhythm of travel. It allows us to gently drift, knowing that the journey, though arduous, always leads to a moment of rest and the quiet promise of home. The journey we have taken tonight, through the quiet annals of medieval road travel, serves as a gentle reminder of a time when every mile was a profound undertaking, when progress was measured in the strength of one's own stride, and when the world unfolded at a pace that encouraged deep observation and quiet contemplation. We have explored the textures of the road itself, the clinging mud, the choking dust, the treacherous bogs, and understood the toll they took on the body. We have acknowledged the unseen shadows of bandits, the pervasive anxieties they cast, and the quiet resilience demanded to overcome them. We have sought solace in the humble inns and sacred monasteries, finding fleeting moments of comfort and connection amidst the harshness. We have felt the bite of the unforgiving weather, the burden of every carried possession, and the insidious creep of weariness and illness. And finally, we have witnessed the profound relief of the journey's end, the quiet triumph of reaching one's destination, and the lasting impact that such an ordeal left on the human spirit. As we conclude our quiet exploration, allow the subtle echoes of these ancient journeys to settle within you. Imagine the quiet courage of those who walk these paths, their lives dictated by the rhythm of the sun and the silent demands of the land. There was no rush, no instant gratification, only the slow, deliberate unfolding of each day, each step. Their world, though fraught with challenges, possessed a profound simplicity, a direct connection to the fundamental elements of existence that we, in our modern haste, often overlook. The pervasive quiet that defined their travels, broken only by the natural sounds of the world or the soft murmur of human effort, offers a soothing contrast to the constant clamour of our own lives. Consider the resilience, the determination, and the unwavering faith that propelled these travellers forward. Their stories, though often unwritten, are etched into the very landscape they traversed, in the ancient ruts of the roads, the weathered stones of the bridges, and the enduring spirit of human endeavour. These are not tales of grand adventure, but of quiet perseverance, of the everyday courage required to navigate a challenging world. It is in this quiet persistence, in the gentle rhythm of their endless steps, that we find a profound and calming truth about the human spirit. So, as you drift further into repose, carry with you the image of the medieval road, sometimes harsh, sometimes beautiful, always demanding, yet ultimately a path to connection, to purpose, and to the quiet understanding of one's own inner strength. Let the gentle echoes of history lull you as the journey concludes, and a profound sense of calm settles within. The quiet road, stretching into the mist, awaits the next sunrise and the next journey, just as it always has. Good night.